Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now. Hi, I'm Dr. Lori. Welcome to today's episode. This is going to be a little bit unique in the sense that Dr. Pat and I have been co-hosting for the past 2 weeks, but part of the reason that I am actually here and doing this show was because somebody found me and thought that this was an interesting topic and one that I could shed some light on, which I'm really excited about. So I believe if you've listened to the past couple of episodes, you may have gotten some kind of hints about Dr. Pat and that she is a full-fledged member of the neurodivergent community. So we thought we would do something a little unusual, and I'm actually going to interview her today. And we will hear about her journey in discovering that she was a neurodivergent individual, or perhaps maybe just finding the label for what it was that she knew potentially all along. But before we get started, we are going to take a moment to pause and take 3 box breaths together. I'm going to cue you to breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, and breathe in. But I won't count to 4 since everybody's breaths are they're their own. They're unique. Your unique self. So you will decide how long you want to breathe in. So we're going to breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause, breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause, breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause. So what I would like to start with, if Dr. Pat, if you could just kind of give us a little bit of an overview of kind of who you are and what your journey has been like, and then I'll probably ask you maybe some more specific questions
Sure.
about your place in the neurodivergent community.
So for many of us, the who are you question or who do you want to become question, it's kind of the kind of question where, when people ask you, for those of us that are in that highly creative zone, it's not surprising that we come out with the most incredible things, right? Even if you're a young child and, your answer is, I want to be Elvis. Okay. And so your parents could take that literally, or if you have the kind of mom I had, my dad remarried after my mom's death. Um, she doesn't really get that you want to be Elvis. What she gets is you want to play the guitar and sing. That's really, and Elvis happened to be a role model for whatever reason. I mean, we all have them in our lives. We all have people. But for somebody like me who couldn't relate very well to the English language, I stuttered most of my teenage years. So good luck with that. You learn some skills, you learn along the way. But most of us from my generation, we didn't even understand this term. We just knew when you entered school, if you couldn't keep up, you were slow. If you stuttered and you couldn't answer a question, you were slow. If you couldn't read like other people, you were slow. And if you couldn't do fancy geometrical mathematical equations, you were slow. But if you are highly creative, can put multiple concepts together at one point in time, it didn't count. And so now the world is changing. And thank you for what you do because it gives us an understanding. Um, I knew that growing up, there was something different about me. My mom knew it. My sister knew it. My dad was never around for it. My stepmom, Doris, Mama Doris, knew it. And each of them handled the situation differently.
I think it's amazing though that she recognized when you said I want to be Elvis, that that didn't really mean that you wanted to be Elvis, but
Right.
that meant that you wanted to sing and play music, especially as part of that generation, that she was able to make
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
connection there and see that in you and see something different than what it was that you were saying at face value.
Yeah. So let me give you a quick background on Mama Doris. When you have a stepmom that had her first child at 12 and her second child at 13, she has learned a few things in life. You know, when you come from the deep South and you move your two deep South children into the Bronx of New York, you learn something. When you marry my dad, then you learn a whole lot. And so for me, I got the benefit of our own transformation and learning, and she passed it on. But the number one thing she taught me was perseverance, the power of that. See, and there are some of us that don't get that chance to persevere because people around us don't think we have a half a brain to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so impressed in her ability to sort of see past
Yeah,
the surface, and I'm anticipating that she's perhaps long gone and we can't thank her for that. Hopefully you had that opportunity
I did. I
um
did.
to do that. You know, because definitely a very unique individual who could see that, because during the period of time that you were in the school system, and I don't think I'm giving away um age too much here, even before my time, you know, I was in school for a while before special education laws became a federal mandate. So it was definitely a whole period of time where if you couldn't do what it was that they thought you were supposed to
Yeah.
do, nobody knew what to do with you.
No, and there were no ability. You know, the good thing for me, I was surrounded by people that helped me along the way. I mean, including graduating high school. I mean, that was a I had a 50-50 chance. I did go to summer school, but I figured out a way to kind of trick the system in, of sorts. And you know, my life was I was always a free spirit. You know, you couldn't keep me out of Manhattan. You couldn't keep me out of going down and listening to all the artists at the Cafe Wa. And those of you that watched any of the Bob Dylan movie that came out, I mean, the Cafe Wa was exactly what it was. And there were so many other places there in the village that you could to go. And, you know, my love for music, I used to go as, first of all, you all should know I was a very adult looking young person. So I could, and I did have these extra licenses, let's just call them, because back in the day, you could literally get extra licenses, which got me into a lot of places. But the Blue Note was a little different. I think they had a 21 age. So I would go and I would literally bring a little chair and sit outside because I remember this like yesterday. You know, you could see the neon light and you can hear that jazz music like it was nobody's business. And I met the most incredible people because most of the musicians didn't stay there. They either came to the back or the front. But you see, what's the point of this? Well, now we are in a place where you and we give back. I work with people in the addiction community, and so many of them fit into both categories, struggling with emotional and addiction, but also being neurodiverse. And when you have like dual diagnosis and you have things like that, there are a lot of mountains to climb. And that's how you and I are giving back, doing a show like this to say, look, Matt James was a sponsor of my show when I first did it. Now, Matt James is associated with NLP.com. He's one of the founders of the NLP movement. And I remember Matt saying to me on one show, and I don't remember the topic, you know, Pat, whatever you think you are, you're more than that. And then I remember a teacher saying to me, remember, you may be different, but you're not less than. You see, those two phrases, how can we change lives with those, right?
Exactly. One of my most favorite videos that I used to use when I was teaching at the university was from a woman named Rita Pearson, who unfortunately is no longer with us. We could certainly use her educational leadership many, many times. And she always talked about every child needs a champion, and every kid needs at least one person who believes in them, and sees them for who they are and what it is that they can bring into the world. And I think that we are unfortunately right now seeing many children who don't have that, partially because, thank you, COVID. I blame COVID for everything, but a lot of kids got disconnected from the relationships that they were building in schools, or came into it, you know, half in one camp, and then you had a big sort of pause of physical connection, and then trying to come back in. And I'm not sure kids are getting the same things that they might have gotten before that, and they're not building relationships either, which I think is so critical, and also incredibly difficult for many people who are neurodivergent. They have a very difficult time finding their people, finding the people who see them for who they are, who like them for who they are. And I think that unfortunately leads a little bit into your experiences in the addiction world. Is if you get drunk or high, sometimes that takes a piece of the wall down, or everybody else is so drunk and high that they don't realize
And they
that
don't see
you're
you.
not exactly you're not handling the environment the way that they do, so they don't notice it. Which is a very unfortunate thing, because I think the number of people who have found themselves in that situation is high from that particular group of individuals.
Yeah. And you know what I've discovered along the way, and this is a message for all of you out there that are thinking that any kind of drug, alcohol, any kind of addiction is your pathway to freedom. When I stopped, it's when my creativity became literally unleashed. And I remember this. I packed up my stuff. I went back. Well, first of all, I immediately signed to go to Columbia as my job was being kind of removed from me. And that led me on a pathway to being highly creative in ways. But you see, I wouldn't have been able to do this if I was still drinking or using or any of the things. I wouldn't be able to do it. And what I found was that, coupled with moving to the Pacific Northwest. For those of you that don't know the Pacific Northwest, yes, it does rain, and it does rain a lot. So don't be fooled by the sun. But there's something here energetically. And I got here, and the first thing I did was bought a sketchbook, and I started to sketch, and I started to do creative things. I was waiting to get accepted to school, and I had been rejected by 35 schools. Why? Well, first of all, I didn't know how to fill out applications. The school that wanted me, Columbia, I sent it to the wrong department. See, these are some of the things that can happen,
Yeah.
right? But Dr. Carolyn Grandrose, who I love and who became my partner in figuring out research and helping me enormously to help me, found my zone. And I can put theoretical concepts together in minutes, you see? And Dr. Carolyn Grandrose helped me articulate them and then study them. But these are things that people would tell you, you're not going to graduate high school, let alone go on to get any kind of other anything. And I think that is why we are here today, because I think for the first time I don't like labels, but if we're going to use labels, neurodiverse, especially when I talk to some of the people I work with, they kind of like the phrase. They don't like to be categorized. They don't want to be called anything. But if you're going to call them something, neurodiverse sounds better than you're slow,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
right?
I mean, I don't know. I think it sounds, kind of like mysterious,
It does.
that to me, it has, I agree with you. It has much more of a positive connotation, which I think is something that's really important in our current world, in our current environment. We had a conversation last week, or the last time that we were together, about language. And I think that, for folks, it really does make a difference if we find words that they feel comfortable with. And I think labeling is a double-edged sword. Labels are helpful in the sense that people have some sense of why this person comes into a situation differently than I might have expected them to. But then it can also go the other way of I have lowered expectations for them. Within the
Yeah,
education community, having a label gets you services. Without a label, you don't get services. And then people just get annoyed by you because you can't figure out how to do something because you needed somebody else to break it down or
exactly.
help you in some way. So it's a tricky situation. And, everybody has labels. I mean, you talk about greatest athletes and, greatest this and greatest musicians and, greatest whatever. Everybody gets labeled in some way. So I think, diffusing part of that and recognizing, to take the piece that's useful, take the services that people offer you because of it. I think is definitely important. So I think, you've talked over the course of the past couple of episodes about getting your PhD. So
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you a slightly different question because I think that we could probably guess maybe in some respects the PhD and starting your network, maybe things that you're really proud of. So I want to know what you're looking forward to. What do you see coming up for the future, or what would you like for the future? What kinds of things are
Yeah.
you excited about?
Well, I want to say this first, that part of a journey of somebody like me, and I'm not, many people are looking right now and probably saying, she doesn't look ADHD. Well, that's not the part of the neurodiverse part that I'm on. Although some people may think I am, not necessarily. I'm somebody that can handle multiple things at one time. I'm some of these people that if you look at the new definitions and look at the spectrum diagnosis now, we have a million categories, but I also have a label on what happens to me. So there's a big long term for me. When you speak words, I see pictures. When I read word, I see pictures. So the bottom line is GRE exams are not going to work for me. But number one, our greatest challenge in mind is on the emotional intelligence scale. It's being able to learn, despite everything in your life, how do you still have faith? How do you believe in yourself? Because our worst enemy in the neurodiverse field is doubt. People say it's fear. It's not. I jump from airplanes. It's doubt. And doubt is insidious. It shows up the minute that you can't figure out how to tie a shoelace. Hello, that like for neural. But here's what I'm most excited about. Recently, I've tapped back into that creativity. And so where it comes up for me is when I'm really challenged by life things, by business things, by personal things. That's when it kicks in. I don't understand the science of that. You do, so maybe you can fill us in. But I am most excited about three projects. One, we're finishing up our websites and getting ready to announce our launch, but also training you all on our new technology. And clearly, that's not going to be me. That's going to be Jessica and Linda and Chris, maybe. But that I'm excited about. Why? Because it opens a new door. The second thing is the transformation of the transformation network. See, the vision for the transformation network has always been to be a community, members, articles, summits. I'm very excited about that. And that's in conjunction. The third thing I'm really interested in, and it's on the plate for us, is there are separate projects that are under our brand, but also under my personal brand. I cannot wait for my trademark attorney to give me permission to launch Unstuckable. It is a brand that was literally taken from me, and we're in the process of getting that trademark back. People have seen, I made the word up. Okay, so this is a neurodiverse person. You make up words that don't exist. I made up the word Unstuckable. I bought the domain 22 years ago. And yet, the minute you open your mouth about it or you put a chapter in the book, somebody sees it and there they go. So I'm excited about those things. But the bottom line is We're now ready to give back to the world. That is what excites me. These are like tasks and things, but the impact is what gets me fired up to help people.
Service to others,
Yep.
which, you know, not to go all AA on you, but that's that's the foundation.
Oh my God,
Um,
you got to be kidding. AA, AA is not the Automobile Society. For those of you that may not know, this is Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. Narcotics Anonymous is another one. There are others. But I was very fortunate to get clean and sober in New York by a man who literally believed in service. I'm not kidding. The first time I walked into a meeting pretending I was a man, I had a Sinead O'Connor haircut, I had a hoodie on. I accidentally went into the men's meeting because I was high. And then on my way out, this guy with this really long beard captures me and two other guys who were hanging out in the back. And he said, you, and you're now my sponsees. They said to one guy, you go do this. The other guy, you go do this. And me, you go clean the bathrooms, the men's room, because I was pretending. So my first, and all three of us did it. See, this is what's so odd. When you are that far down the bottom, anybody that will give you good orderly direction is a godsend. Off I went, cleaning urinals. Hello, men walking in. I'm pretending I'm a boy. Big hoodie, couldn't tell. Sinead O'Connor hair, black eye. I was just beaten up
oh dear.
and walked in. Yeah, I'm telling you. I mean, I do know how to defend myself, but not on this day. Yeah, somebody caught me from behind and threw me down a flight of stairs. So, but
Wow.
that's
I
the
think I'm
journey.
starting to think your superpower is not even necessarily so much the fact that you can take a whole bunch of things, put them together and make them make sense, is the fact that you're survived.
That is a superpower. I talked on a previous show that I went back to my high school reunion and I thanked Gwen and I thanked my principal who was at my table. I said, thank you for not expelling me in my senior year with 48 days out. And I said, Gwen, thank you for taking me in. I have pictures that I'm going to send Emily of my high school reunion pictures because these are the people that saved my life. And going back and thanking them was enormous for me.
Yeah. And I'm sure they were totally thrilled because I know as an educator, I'm always so excited when students come back and tell me how they're doing and what's been going on. And of course, you take even a little bit more from it too if they say
Yeah.
you did this thing that to me I didn't even probably even realize I did this tiny little thing and that or you said those three words that one day and that made a difference. I think it what is it? Maya Angelou said, it's not how you what and it's not always what you say. It's how people feel, from what it is that you are saying. So I think it's so incredibly important.
And the other thing
Um,
as I learned, which is hard for us, is I had to learn how to ask for help. I didn't grow up with that. And anytime I would ask for help, I didn't know what to ask for. See, I didn't know what was happening. On the
yeah.
one end, highly creative, highly energetic, even as a young child, got expelled from Catholic boarding school. That's a whole nother story. And I didn't know how to do things. Like when I met Linda's mom, I walked into her house. I had never been around middle class people. I grew up in the projects. I mean, come on. I was homeless at 17. I know how to dive in dumpsters and I could sell hot dogs from a hot dog cart. When I met Joan, this middle class family in Watchung, New Jersey, and I walked into Joan's house, she took one look at me and said, young lady, if you're going to be in my house, you're going to lift your head up and you're going to look me in the eye and say hello. And don't ever put your head down again. You're enough. I never put my head down after that. And this woman, I watched her. I didn't understand it at first, but I had to set the Thanksgiving table at my first Thanksgiving with them. I did not know how to set a table. So I set it creatively. She brought out china, 3 or 4 different glasses, 4 or 5 different forks. I mean, and she piled them on the table. And I took them and I creatively designed how each unique plating had different structures of forks, spoons, knives, glasses. Creatively, I made a story out of each plate. And when they sat down, one of them started to, big family, the brothers, the sisters, Bjorn, the man who taught me how to use a chainsaw. When they sat down, somebody started opening their mouth. And Joan says, "What a beautiful table. How creative. I wonder how many of you can figure out which fork to use without it being in the right place."
Good point. Well done. Well done, Joan, right? Um, yeah, I mean, I think being able to see what somebody brings to the table is so immensely important. It's important, obviously, it's important for them to know that, but I mean, we all learn so much from the
Yeah,
way that somebody else looks at the world. We all have a different viewpoint,
yeah,
and it can be so valuable, especially when people look at things in a more creative way as
yeah.
opposed to, sort of your traditional standard approach to
Yeah.
things.
And sometimes, don't you find some of the things we do well are just not recognized? Now, if you want me to tear apart your car engine and put it back together and clean your carburetor, my dad taught me that. If you want me to really cut off a 12-foot, quarter-inch molding down to a 16th of an inch, Buren firing, Linda's father taught me that on a chainsaw, scared me to death. So your show is helping people recognize that we need to focus on who we truly are and the gift of that, and not who people think we should be and the wishful thinking of that.
No, we need all of those gifts. There's no doubt that we need all of those gifts. And let me know when you come to the East Coast. I could probably find some things for you to do at my
Oh
house.
my God, just give me some woodwork to do. Are you kidding me? I say we had to cut down a big 75-foot tree. I saved giant stumps. And Linda says to me, "What are you going to do with them?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "What are you going to do with the wood?" Linda's triple Virgo. "What are you going to do with the wood?" I said, "I'm just going to carve them. What are you going to make?" "I don't know yet." I said, "I don't think what's his face knew he was cutting out the thinker." And I said, "I'm just going to, I want to create something with them." "Well, what are you going to cut them with?" So I buy this very cheap 12-inch saw, power saw, so I could work with the power saw. "Well, what are you going to make? Where are you going to put it?" I said, "More to be revealed." See, that's what I've learned when people ask me questions, because I really don't know that answer.
Well, she should know better too. She's
She does
your
know
best
better.
friend.
She does know better.
All right. Well, I think actually, unfortunately, we're out of time. We could probably talk for
Yeah.
another hour or so, and I suspect that we will kind of continue some of our conversation
Yes.
in future episodes. But I greatly appreciate you
Thank you so much for all you
being my
do.
my first semi official guest, and sharing with us
Mm.
some of your own
Yeah.
experiences. So.
Thank you for doing this, because so long we've been silent. So long I've been silent. I didn't fit in. I don't fit in on the right terminology of being on the spectrum. But we have to be able to be who we are and own who we are and feel proud of who we are. And you're giving us an opening and a platform to do that. Because if we can stop a suicide, or we can clean up somebody's addiction, it's a whole new world. Thank you
Yeah,
for today.
that I mean, unfortunately, the roads that some folks are going down are just incredibly frightening, and anything that we could do, again, service to others. So if anyone is looking to reach me, there's a couple of potential ways that you can do that. You can go onto my website, Noto Holistic Consulting, .com, or you can send me an email at notoconsulting2002 at gmail.com. Again, Dr. Pat, thank you so much for your cooperation and allowing me to have you be my first guest. I really appreciate it, and more to come. So the next episode that we have, we'll be visiting with another individual who will be bringing their experiences to us for us to share. Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at notoholisticconsulting.com.